The wire had been pulled slightly too tight. When the lead vehicle passed, the trigger mechanism partially engaged but didn't fully release, meaning the device was still armed, still waiting. Hayes slowly exhaled. How big? Lena brushed dirt away from the buried container. Her face hardened. Big enough to flip the first two trucks, Miles muttered under his breath. Jesus. Hayes grabbed his radio. All vehicles maintain position. Possible IED en route. The valley suddenly felt much narrower. Lena stood slowly, scanning the hillsides. Ambush terrain. Perfect ambush terrain, which meant the bomb probably wasn't the only problem. Sergeant, she said quietly. Yeah? If I were setting this trap, Hayes finished her sentence, you'd have shooters waiting. Miles immediately raised his rifle and scanned the ridgelines. The soldiers began stepping out of the trucks, spreading into defensive positions along the road. The valley was silent. Too silent. Then Lena heard something again. Not a click, a whisper of gravel sliding down rock somewhere high above. Her eyes snapped to the right hillside. A shadow moved between two boulders. Contact right ridge, she shouted. Gunfire exploded from the rocks. Bullets cracked across the road, sparking against the armored vehicles. Soldiers dove for cover. Miles fired back toward the ridge. Ambush! Hayes grabbed the radio. Contact! Contact! Right side bridge! The hills erupted with muzzle flashes. The enemy fighters had been waiting for the explosion, but it never came, because one person heard a sound no one else noticed. Lena dropped behind a tire and aimed toward the ridge. A figure popped up behind a rock. She fired once. The figure disappeared. Dust and gunfire filled the valley. The ambush had started too early. Without the explosion, the attackers had lost their biggest advantage. Hayes crawled beside Lena. You saved half this convoy, he said between bursts of gunfire. She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on the ridge. The fight lasted 6 minutes. Then the attackers disappeared back into the hills as quickly as they came. Silence returned slowly. Smoke drifted across the road. Miles lowered his rifle. Everyone good? He shouted. Voices answered back. No casualties. Hayes looked down at the buried bomb again, then at Lena. 6 vehicles, he said quietly. 32 soldiers. He shook his head. All gone if that thing blew. Miles let out a low whistle. And it didn't, because you heard a click. Lena brushed dust off her gloves. Because someone set the wire wrong. Hayes smiled slightly. No, he said, because the right scout was listening. The bomb disposal team arrived 20 minutes later. The device contained nearly 30 pounds of explosives, enough to rip the lead vehicle apart and block the road completely. Exactly the kind of explosion that would have trapped the convoy in the valley. Exactly the kind of trap the attackers expected. As the engineers carefully disarmed the device, Miles leaned against the truck beside Lena. You know what the weird part is? He said. What? I was sitting 2 feet from you. Yeah? And I didn't hear a thing. Lena looked out toward the quiet ridgeline. That's the job. Miles chuckled. Well, remind me never to play hide and seek with you. She smiled faintly. Back at base later that night, the convoy commander gathered everyone in the briefing room. The disarmed bomb sat on a table in the center, a silent reminder. The commander looked around the room. This device was designed to destroy the lead vehicles and trap the rest of the convoy in the valley. He paused. Which means most of us in this room wouldn't be here right now. His eyes turned toward Lena. Specialist Morales. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair. You stopped the convoy because of a sound, he said. Yes, sir. What sound? She hesitated, then answered honestly. A click. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then the commander nodded slowly. Sometimes the difference between disaster and survival, he tapped the metal casing of the bomb, is one person paying attention. Miles leaned toward her and whispered, You realize you're going to hear about this for the rest of your career. Lena sighed. I was hoping nobody noticed. Miles laughed. Too late. But what no one else in the room realized was something Lena never mentioned. When she first heard the click, it hadn't just sounded wrong, It had sounded deliberate, like a mechanical whisper warning her, a tiny sound buried beneath the rumble of engines, a sound most people would never notice, but she did, and because of that, 32 soldiers drove out of that valley alive.